When things got difficult with my family, I had no choice but to move out. My luck had run out regarding my living situation, and I couldn't keep crashing on friends' couches forever. I searched all the roommate and apartment apps and websites until something caught my attention. A man named Ben listed a room for rent in his 3-bedroom, 1-story house for $1,300 a month. He would be both my landlord and roommate, as he also lived in the house. Ben noted in the ad that he would be out most of the time, giving the renter the house to themselves often. However, he emphasized some ground rules in all caps: no parties, no large gatherings, no drinking in the living room, and no use of the basement. These rules seemed standard enough. I visited the house and met Ben. As soon as he opened the door, I sensed he was a bit reclusive. His demeanor was quiet and somewhat awkward. While showing me around, he seemed nervous, his voice shaking and stuttering. The bedroom was a good size, and the house's floor plan was nice, with an open layout that combined the kitchen, living room, and dining room into one big space. For $1,300 a month in my area, it was a great deal. Ben reiterated the ground rules in person, emphasizing again that the attic and basement were off-limits, as he used them for storage. This seemed fair enough, so I told him I was interested. We shook hands, and 2 days later, I was moving in. We didn't draft any sort of lease or contract. I would just pay him off the books month to month on the first day of each month. I settled in quickly, as the bedroom was already furnished with a bed and basic furniture. I only had to hang some wall decor and fill the dresser and closet with clothes. Thankfully, the bedroom had a lock, and Ben gave me the key so I could lock it when he wasn't home, which seemed like a nice gesture at first. Ben never disclosed what he did for work, only saying he usually wouldn't be home. I quickly learned this wasn't true. His car was always in the driveway when I came home from work. I began to notice loud sounds outside my bedroom at night, from footsteps to doors opening and closing constantly. One night, around 2 a.m., I went out to use the bathroom and saw the basement door open. I walked over to the top of the stairs and looked down, seeing a dim light from a far corner out of view and hearing banging sounds. The noise stopped, and Ben appeared at the bottom of the stairs, looking up at me. The look he gave was creepy, and he seemed visibly annoyed. I apologized, saying I was just going to the bathroom. He angrily told me to shut the basement door, which I did, feeling insanely weirded out. A week later, I came home to find my bedroom door unlocked. I always locked it before leaving. While nothing seemed to be missing, some items had been moved. My clothes in the dresser were no longer neatly stacked, and the closet door was cracked open. It dawned on me that Ben had his own key and had gone through my stuff. This clear invasion of privacy and violation of my tenant rights left me figuring out how to confront him. I knocked on his bedroom door, but there was no answer, even though his car was in the driveway. I went back to my room after microwaving my dinner. While relaxing and watching TV, I heard Ben's bedroom door open. Seizing the opportunity, I confronted him in the living room as he was about to leave the house. I asked if he had been in my room, and he blankly said no. I mentioned the unlocked door and my stuff being moved, but he insisted I had the only key to my bedroom. He claimed he was in a hurry and left. I was flabbergasted. Not wanting to stay there, I started looking for other listings online. Realizing it was the first time Ben wasn't home while I was, curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to check out the basement. After ensuring his car was gone, I opened the basement door using my phone flashlight as there were no light switches. The steps creaked as if I were in an abandoned house. The basement had a tan carpet curling at the walls, poorly fitted to the floor. It was small, with just one ugly couch in the middle of the room and a slightly funky smell that worsened near a door in the corner. The door was locked, or maybe fortunately, as I wasn't sure I wanted to know what was inside, admitting that smell. It almost smelled like raw sewage, but worse. After a quick sweep of the basement, finding only taped-up cardboard boxes, I went back upstairs and shut the door. I stayed in my room the rest of the night and never heard Ben come back. He must have returned after I fell asleep. I woke up in the dark to an unknown sound. The floor next to my bed creaked, and I turned to see Ben leaning over my bed, looking at me. I screamed, and he told me to shush, asking if I had gone into the basement. I screamed no and asked how he got in, as I had locked the door. He asked if I was sure. Flipping the situation, I yelled, asking if he had entered my room while I was out. He replied no and turned to leave, holding up his hand in the dark. He said I should find other living arrangements before closing the door. I started packing right then and there, not staying another minute. I knocked on his door, demanding half of the rent back, since I had only been there for 2 weeks. Moments later, he handed me $500 and $100 bills. I took it, packed up, and left within an hour, sleeping in my car that night. I ended up back at my parents' house the next day. After explaining the crazy experience I had, they were more welcoming. I moved out a month later, but my parents and I are fine now. If you're choosing to have a random roommate from online, be careful and use your best judgment after meeting them. It was my junior year of college, and I had moved off campus into a student apartment building. The school assigned my roommate, Brian, who seemed like a nice guy at first. He was friendly and polite, always smiling and making small talk. However, as days passed, I started noticing strange things about him. Little quirks and odd behaviors that made me uneasy. Brian would always linger in my room, asking pushy questions about my personal life and poking around my belongings as if he were overly comfortable doing so. At first, I brushed it off as harmless curiosity, even though it felt weird. But the more I thought about it, the more it bothered me. There were also strange noises from Brian's room late at night, talking and shuffling sounds. I tried to ignore them, assuming he was watching TV or talking on the phone, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. One night, unable to sleep because of the noises, I decided to investigate. I crept silently down the hallway and pressed my ear against Brian's door, straining to hear. I heard Brian whispering to himself, his voice low and muffled. Then the whispering stopped, and there was silence. Suddenly, I heard my name, Jack. Did he know I was outside his door? I quickly tiptoed back to my room, silently crawling into bed. I didn't know what to make of it. Was Brian hiding something, or was he sleepwalking? The next day, I kept thinking about the previous night. As days went by and the sounds persisted, my paranoia grew. Brian's behavior became stranger. He made odd glances at me, and his movements seemed furtive. One night, I woke up and heard Brian's whispering voice right outside my door. It was freaking me out. I wondered if he was sleepwalking. I went to the door and put my ear against it, and like before, the whispering stopped. Then, Brian said my name again. This time, I replied, asking if he was okay. He didn't respond, and I heard his footsteps walk away. The following night, I woke up to my bedroom door closing and heard Brian's footsteps walking away. This was getting out of hand. I decided to confront him about his potential sleepwalking. I told him I had been hearing him walking around late at night and heard him close my door. I asked if he had any history of sleepwalking or sleeping disorders. He seemed unsure how to answer, but eventually said he did tend to sleepwalk sometimes. I wasn't buying it. Something was up. I decided to search Brian's room for answers. I waited until he was out, then crept into his room, searching quickly. Just as I was about to give up, I found a small, nondescript drawer hidden at the back of his closet. Inside, I found dozens of photographs, mostly featuring me asleep and one other guy who looked our age. They were taken from different angles and distances, some so close up that I could see the pores on my skin and individual strands of hair. I felt sick, realizing Brian had been secretly taking pictures of me while I slept. I took a picture of the drawer's contents and a handful of the photos as evidence. I packed my things and the next day showed the photos to the student housing department. They took action and I was reassigned to a different apartment with a normal roommate. I never spoke to Brian again. Even years later, the memory of those photos and Brian's whispering haunts me. I never found out who the other guy in the photos was. When I was 23, I had to move out of state for work. I still work with the company, but have since moved back to my hometown. At the time, I needed an affordable place to live, so I posted online for a roommate. A guy named Tom reached out to me on Facebook, stating he had a room available in his place. He seemed normal enough in his pictures, so I was open to having a male roommate, despite my parents' concerns. Tom and I FaceTimed, and he gave me a virtual tour of the house. He owned the house outright, and it was a modest place in town, only a 10-minute drive from my office. Tom seemed nice, and his price and rules were fair. He said the room was available immediately, which was perfect. A week later, I packed my things and drove down. Tom greeted me outside the house and handed me a key. He was really short, eye level with me. He helped me bring in some of my heavier bags and showed me my room, which was already furnished. His friend had recently moved out, so I replaced the pillows and bed sheets with my own. The rest of the day, I settled in. Tom was trying to get to know me and make me feel at home, but I didn't get any overly friendly vibes yet. The next day, he offered to drive me around town to show me the area. I agreed to get off on a good start with him. He showed me shopping centers, restaurants, and then suggested we get lunch. I wasn't hungry, and his suggestion of a sit-down lunch felt almost like a date. I politely declined, saying I don't drink on work nights. He was a bit pushy, but eventually gave up, going quiet, seemingly upset. My first week at work was my main focus, but a few days in, I did my laundry and noticed my hamper seemed moved, and a pair of my underwear was missing. I searched my room thoroughly but couldn't find it. The disturbing thought that Tom might have taken it crossed my mind, but I refused to believe it just yet. I bought a lockable doorknob and installed it while Tom wasn't home. I figured I'd tell him later. That night, I woke to banging on my bedroom door. It was Tom, sounding angry. I pretended to be asleep, scared to open the door. The next morning, Tom texted me, demanding we talk after work. I apologized for not telling him about the doorknob, but he insisted it had to go. I felt uneasy, wondering how he knew I had changed it. Did he try coming into my room that night? I changed the doorknob back, but then a girl knocked on the door, warning me about Tom. She said he had multiple restraining orders and was dangerous. I was terrified. I started packing and found a studio apartment across town. I texted Tom that I had to move out due to family reason. He came back, questioning if someone had said something to me. I insisted it was family reason. Later that night, I woke to find him sitting on my bed. I screamed, and he put his hand on my mouth, telling me to shush. I ran outside, called the police, and they made him give me my money back while I collected my things. I moved into the studio apartment the next day, never wanting to live with another man I didn't know again.